Hello everyone, it's Sierra from Visa Place, and in this video I will be talking about Canadian family sponsorship. Canada believes in reuniting families and created this immigration stream to help do so. It includes ways to sponsor your spouse, children, parents, or even grandparents to live as permanent residents in Canada. This means that your relatives can live, work, and even study in Canada. Family immigration may seem like an overwhelming topic, but I'm here to break it down for you. First, we are going to discuss what a close relative is and which immigration streams are open to close relatives. Then we will explore other options for your relatives who are not considered close relatives. We will go over who is able to and who is not able to sponsor relatives. After we break down family immigration, we will go over some frequently asked questions and tips to help you on your own application. Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and people registered in Canada as an Indian are able to sponsor relatives to Canada. There are two types of categories of relatives that can be sponsored, which are close relatives and other relatives. Close relatives consist of spouse or common law partners, dependent or adopted children, parents, and grandparents. And the other relatives would include any other relatives that do not fall under the close relative category, which includes siblings, aunts, uncles, or adopted relatives. Canada Family Sponsorship has three subsections for close relatives: spousal sponsorship, children's sponsorship, or parent and grandparent sponsorship, which is also known as the Super Visa program. Spousal sponsorship allows you to sponsor your spouse or common law partner to Canada. Children's sponsorship allows you to sponsor your dependent children under the age of 22 years old or adopted children to Canada. It is important to note that dependent children cannot have a spouse or common law partner of their own. Canada's Super Visa is great for eligible parents and grandparents. This visa allows individuals to stay in Canada for 2 years continuously. In a case where you would like to sponsor a relative that is not considered a close relative, different rules will apply. The first case that I will cover is for orphaned siblings, nephews, nieces, and or grandchildren. If you would like to sponsor these relatives, they must be related to you, both parents must have passed away, they must be under the age of 18, and they must be single. You cannot sponsor them if one of the parents are alive, if no one knows where the parents are, their parents have abandoned them, they are under the care of someone else while one or both of their parents are alive, or the parents are in jail. The second case is for other relatives. Canada allows you to sponsor one relative that is related to you by blood or adoption if you meet all the following requirements. First requirement is that you don't have any living relatives that you can sponsor instead, like a spouse, common law partner, conjugal partner, a child, a parent, a grandparent, an orphan niece or nephew, or orphan grandchild. And requirement number 2 is that you don't have any relatives that are Canadian citizens, permanent residents, or registered Indians. For example, let's say Tom is unmarried and has no children. He is a permanent resident in Toronto and both his parents and grandparents have passed away. Tom also has no relatives living in Canada that are considered Canadian citizens. He would like to sponsor his favorite aunt and her husband to come live in Canada. In this case, Tom meets all the requirements to sponsor his aunt and her husband to come to Canada. Now, all of these programs involve a Canadian citizen or permanent resident sponsoring someone to Canada. But what exactly are the requirements for someone to act as a sponsor? There are 7 main things that a person must show to prove that they are eligible to sponsor. Number 1 is that you will need to show that you are financially able to support the person that you are sponsoring for a period of time. Number 2, you will need to enter a formal agreement to the Canadian government or Quebec's government agreeing to support the person that you are sponsoring and that they will make efforts to support themselves. Number 3, the person that you are sponsoring must demonstrate that they plan on staying in Canada. Number 4, that you are at least 18 years old. Number 5, that you have not been charged or incarcerated with a serious crime. Number 6, that you are not bankrupt. And finally, number 7, your permanent residency cannot be in question. For the most part, to sponsor a relative, you must be living in Canada. However, exceptions are made for Canadian citizens who are living abroad and will be returning to Canada with their sponsored relative and are sponsoring a spouse, common law, or dependent child. For example, where this exception has been made, let's say Allie is living abroad. She meets, marries, and has a child with her partner. They then decide that they'd like to move back to Canada. With these conditions, Allie is able to sponsor her spouse and child while living outside of Canada. If you are living in Quebec and would like to sponsor a relative, you must meet the Canadian government's regulations as well as Quebec's specific regulations. Okay, so we've talked about who is able to sponsor a relative, but let's talk about who is unable to sponsor a relative. You are unable to sponsor a relative if you are in prison, you have not paid alimony or child support, if you've declared bankruptcy and have not been released from it yet, received social assistance for another reason other than disability, have not paid an immigration loan or have missed payments, had late payments, and you cannot sponsor a relative who has broke the law while in Canada. Although these are some of the common reasons that make someone ineligible to sponsor, every case is unique and there are also other reasons that could make you ineligible. This is why it's a great idea to speak with an immigration lawyer to talk about your case and eligibility. Now that we've covered family immigration, it's time to dive into some frequently asked questions, and then I will also provide some immigration tips. Question number 1 is, what if my sponsorship application is refused? Although receiving a refusal can be upsetting, it's not the end of the world. You can appeal the decision, or you can speak with an immigration lawyer and see what other options are available to you. Question 2, how long will the process take? Unfortunately, there is no direct answer on how long the application process will take. Canada prioritizes spouses and children and typically will take up to a month to be processed. On the other hand, grandparents and parents can take years to be processed. And question number 3, why should I hire an immigration lawyer? Just like any immigration application, you do not need to hire a lawyer, but a lawyer will help you with your application process. Although Canada does prioritize sponsorships, it does not mean that your application will be successful. Hiring an immigration lawyer will help you understand your application in detail, they will help you fill out the necessary paperwork, and they will be a great resource for any concerns that you may have. Now here are some top tips. Number 1, when you're applying for family sponsorship, you will receive an application package with an instruction guide on sponsoring a family member in Canada. Read this very carefully as this will help you better understand the process. Tip number 2, you always want to tell the truth on a visa application. In the case of a family member sponsorship, respond truthfully about the family member that you are wanting to sponsor. Double check with your relative that their marital status, age, education, criminal record, and medical history, etc. are correct. And tip number 3, contact your lawyer or IRCC if any of the information that you provided has changed. This includes changes in circumstances, contact information, or any of the information that you provided about your relative. Now that's it for today's video on family immigration sponsorship. VisaPlace is always here to help you with your immigration needs, so don't hesitate to reach out and get in touch and we can help you with your family sponsorship needs. Book a consultation with VisaPlace today and don't forget to subscribe.